The following is a clip from the David Land podcast. You can listen live here on YouTube at Mondays at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern, or you can listen anytime on your favorite podcasting platforms. Thoughts on Gibbs not letting Bell run dirt races? I would say it's par for the course. I mean, it's just that's Joe Gibbs' MO.
Did
That's
you
what he
did
does.
you did you see what Christopher Bell had to say? Like what he said? Why?
No, I didn't see that. What did he say?
So it's he said that to do his dirt racing, he used to go through Coy,
Oh
and
my God.
now this year he went to Joe, and Joe, from what Christopher Bell said, Joe hates open wheel, the short track dirt racing, whatever it is, and told him no. So, and it's interesting because I had already noticed, like I would have buddies tell me, why won't Christopher Bell run the Knoxville Nationals? Why won't he? He needs to man up and do this. Well, if you look at Christopher Bell's dirt schedule, anyways, it was the Chili Bowl, and then he'd go run Swindell Speed Labs 410 races at short tracks. So he's already never been able to run a 410 at a big track, and this year it looks like he's not able to run at all. But he did just start a team. Gavin Bochelle is going to race. And they have a micro and I believe a midget too that they're going to be running. I think they're going to be running mostly 360 program. So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, I really wish Seabell was able to run the Knoxville Nationals. I feel like, and I hate that. I hate it so much when the NASCAR teams don't let him do it because, like, you have proof in the pudding with Kyle Larson where if you just let him run whatever he wants, and I make this comparison all the time, when Larson was told by Chip Ganassi to slow down the dirt racing, the results in the Cup Series showed they were not as good as when he went to Rick Hendrick and worked a deal and told Rick, I'm not coming unless you let me run whatever I want. Look at what he's done.
Well, I
The
think it's
proof's in the
very
pudding.
important to say that he told Jeff Gordon that. And I think Jeff Gordon has Rick Hendrick's ear and said, look, I understand this is how this guy, but I think you also, this is a dangerous game that Joe Gibbs is playing, in my opinion, because think about the drivers he's had. Think about the drivers that have gotten away from him.
Yeah.
And, what's to say that if Christopher Bell, when his contract comes up, and let's say maybe Tony Stewart comes to him and says, hey, you want to come drive for me? And I'll let you run whatever you want to run.
Yeah.
Do you think Christopher Bell's going to think about that?
And the thought that needs to go through Joe Gibbs' head is, listen, Christopher Bell was your guy in the Final Four last year. He was the statistic, like on paper, he was the best guy out of your team last year. He made it to the championship for, and you're gonna possibly piss him off. Like, that's just not a risk I would take.
Well, and think about this, and it's one of the big stories I think in the NASCAR offseason. It's going to be the thing, by the way, in November that you guys are going to be annoyed about me making 10-minute videos about, is the fact that Joe Gibbs Racing is on pretty shaky ground going into next year. FedEx is expected to not come back with Denny Hamlin. What does that mean for Denny Hamlin? Does that mean Denny's going to go to his own team rather than drive for Gibbs anymore? What about Martin Truex Jr.? How long does he stick around? He seems to have a retirement rumor about him every single year. If he leaves, does Johnny Morris stay with that team? Does Bass Pro Shop stay? That's the question. So if those two are gone, then you're absolutely stuck with Christopher Bell as your absolute number one driver, because we have no idea what Ty Gibbs is going to do in the Cup Series in that car.
Yeah.
No clue. Because we look at his Ty Gibbs Cup Series starts. Were they exactly like impressive?
They were.
I mean, you look at
some of them. Some were impressive.
They weren't like that Daytona road course race though in Xfinity, where it's like, holy
where he
smokes,
just showed up and smoked them.
Yeah. Right. So like it's going to take Ty Gibbs time to become that guy, if he even is that guy. So Christopher Bell may well be thrust into, he's the team leader now. And if he's not a happy team leader, I don't know when his contract comes up, but I would wonder. I would wonder about that. That's a very interesting point. The other thing I wanted to talk about, because I didn't talk about in the other video, is getting rid of the need to be in the top 30 in points to be in the playoffs. What's that all about?
So it basically, you still have to run the full season, But you no longer have to be in the top 30 in points, excuse me, to make it into the playoffs via a waiver. Um, so if you miss 10 races from an injury, you come back and you're not inside the top 30 in points, then you can still be in the playoffs. Um, Someone made a point on a funny point on Twitter that I thought was funny. It would never happen, super unrealistic, but you could win the Daytona 500, start and park every race for the playoffs, and then win the first playoff round, start and park the next two, win the next one, start and park, and then and so on until you win the title.
That's what Ross Chastain's going to do. That's how he's going to break NASCAR next.
That's how he's going to be more creative.
I'm all about that, actually. Ross Chastain better freaking do that. I am pulling. I'll tell you what.
If he wins the Daytona
I'm
500,
picking
put up
Ross
the money.
Chastain to win the Daytona 500 is what I'm going to do. Holy smokes. I want to see that. I want to see that happen.
Credit to Michael Marutz, by the way, on that.
Well,
tweet.
that's Michael. That's exactly who I would have expected to. I'll tell you what, Michael Marutz maybe needs to be the strategist for this year. That's big brain stuff. Oh man, you know what? You know what's fun about NASCAR? The thing that like there came a point where I got broken with NASCAR, where like now I'm just kind of like hoping for the silliest scenario. There was a point where I just rolled my eyes and got mad. Now I'm like, you know what? Screw it. If Ross Chastain can somehow install like a Stadium Super Trucks ramp and ramp over half the field at Charlotte, let's do it.
Yeah.
Screw it. You know, I don't know. I mean, I think the minute they started handing out waivers for various reasons, like that was the point where like playoff eligibility, who cares? Who cares? It doesn't mean anything anymore.
I mean, it's not like I don't agree with giving waivers for injuries or things out of the driver control, but you know, I feel like it is honestly a little bit better to get rid of the top 30 thing. Because I mean, NASCAR can not give you a waiver if they so choose, if the reason is not, you know, sincere and legit. So I really don't think it's that big of a deal, but it's just a thing that we can don't have to really keep an eye on if they're in the top 30 in points.
Okay. I think it's time.
Well, I got two more NASCAR rule changes. Two more NASCAR rule changes. I want to say that we're good.
Oh dear God.
So the first one, not really going to touch on it, just going to say it. The damaged vehicle clock is now 7 minutes instead of 6, and it's going to be 10 in the playoffs. That was a big deal last year, that the damage clock was way too short. Drivers were DNFing races for stupid reasons when their car was drivable, and they were like, "Oh, you used up your clock, you had to DNF."
Well, the damaged vehicle policy has never made any sense to me, because it was put in there as a safety measure, but I don't see how it's a safety measure because it always brings out cautions. It's always throwing debris all over the racetrack, and in some cases, we've seen cars go out and the suspension fails and they crash.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Are you kidding me? How is that a safety rule?
Putting them on a clock to fix something that you should probably take a little bit more than 7 minutes on to make sure it's safe. But I think the big thing that last year that kept happening was drivers they would work on their car for a certain amount of time, and then they get to the very end of the clock and their car would be pretty much perfect, but the clock would just barely tick away and they'd get screwed and not be able to rejoin the race. There were a few drivers last year I remember had perfect clean cars that could not come back to the race because they'd used up the clock. And then NASCAR does this thing where they'll do something, it'll go in the news for like a week in like the mid-season, early season, and then you'll not hear about it for the rest of the year. Like it'll just go unnoticed. And then in the off season, poof, there it is. And that is the wet weather tires on short tracks. They tested those early in the year, didn't hear about them, never thought anything would come from it. And then poof, all of a sudden, hey guys, we're going to have wet weather tires or short tracks.
What I'm excited about is on that list is IRP.
Yeah.
And I'm I've never hoped for rain at Indianapolis. Well, I do now because of the stupid road course, but
remember, it's got to be damp too. You can't hope for rain. It's got to be damp.
Oh, that's going to be tough in August because if it's
going to rain in August, it's going to rain in Indy.